Welcome to Why Do I Keep Doing That? This podcast is for smart, capable people who are tired of repeating patterns they've already outgrown. I'm Brenda Florida, certified life coach, and if you've ever walked away from a conversation, a decision, or a relationship thinking, why did I just do that again? You are in the right place. You're not stuck, you're patterned. And patterns can be interrupted. In each episode, I'm going to break down why you keep doing what you do, where it started, and how to shift it so you can stop reacting and start leading in your own life. I'm so glad you're here. You already know what the problem is. You've thought about it, you've talked about it, you've maybe even worked on it. So why are you still doing that thing you do? It's because it's not really the problem, it's the pattern. And awareness alone does not break the pattern. That's what makes this easier said than done sometimes, and why I love being a guide for people who really want to break the patterns in their lives. Because sure, the problems are important, the problems need a certain amount of attention, but if we don't go beneath the problem into the pattern, we'll just keep repeating the problem in one way or another. So here are some real life problems that need addressing, but also have a pattern under them. Overgiving in relationships. You could set a boundary and stop overgiving in that relationship, and then some other relationship or situation is going to trigger you back into overgiving because of the pattern beneath it that needs addressing. Avoiding hard conversations, procrastinating when something's really important, saying yes when you mean no. I did a whole episode on that. You can go back and watch. All those things indeed need to be addressed, but are driven by patterns. And the pattern could be people pleasing. The pattern could be a fear of being rejected. The pattern could be a fear of not being loved or just not feeling good enough. So I can't tell you on a podcast what your pattern is. That's what the Way Out session is for. Because the same problem on the surface could be a different pattern in you than it is for me and someone else. So the patterns we have to look into personally, okay? But the problem is where it starts, where we start with it to find it, okay? So that we can, it's like being at the doctor's office. We need to know the symptoms before we can diagnose the actual condition, okay? And you could come in with a cough or, you think it's a cold, whatever, and it could be bronchitis or it could be pneumonia. The cough itself doesn't tell you which of those it is. So sure, we're going to get you some cough medicine for that cough, but then we need to know, are we treating bronchitis? Are we treating pneumonia? Are we treating something else? We've got to figure out what that pattern is. So awareness of it, if we stick with our medical metaphor, if I know I have pneumonia, just knowing that isn't going to be enough, right? So I don't say, oh, I took my cough medicine and I know I have pneumonia, so great, I'm going to be fine in a couple days. No, we know the cough medicine is just to deal with the symptom. And now, and knowing we have pneumonia doesn't make pneumonia go away. So now we need the equivalent of our antibiotic in our personal growth. So awareness of your pattern. Oh, I know I'm a people pleaser. Oh, I know I tend to do this. I really need external validation. I really crave that. I'm really, have these fears that I'm going to be rejected or that I'm not good enough. And I know that. And so blah, blah. Okay. And so you keep doing behaviors that are in alignment with keeping that pattern in place. What I want to do with you is teach you how to break that pattern and get the, actually, I should say, first is like interrupting it, which starts to give you traction into breaking it. Okay, breaking it is kind of the end result, and it takes several steps before we can do that. We have to sort of notice it, interrupt it. We get this traction. I like that word. For moving forward, not moving forward with the pattern in place, not becoming the best version of ourselves we can be with our pattern. We want to interrupt and break the pattern. So let me give you a couple examples of what this traction piece looks like. It looks like when someone asks you to do something, without even taking the time to think of it, just respond with, "Let me get back to you," because that will then give you the time to get away from them, to not feel the pressure, to check in with this part of you that probably wants to say yes all the time because you want to make them happy, or you don't want to risk their disappointment, or whatever that is part of the problem of saying yes too often, right? And by just interrupting it, by not letting yourself respond right away, but saying, "Let me get back to you," that's a pattern interrupt. And that's where the traction starts. We don't need to over explain. If you start over explaining, there's another pattern. Then you interrupt that with stopping wherever you're at. Just stop over explaining. And if you need to repeat the important part, because maybe what you said isn't super coherent, I know I've done that, or super clear, then just say the clear part. You know what? Let me stop. It's fine to say, like, let me stop with the explaining. What I mean is whatever. Just need you kids to go to bed at 9:00, whatever it is. I don't have to say because of this and because of that and because of this and because of that and you that and that. That's over explaining. Or at work, I really think we should go in this direction because and as soon as you realize you're doing that over explaining, you just go, "Oh, you know what? Let me just stop myself there." The point is, I believe the best direction for us to go in is blank. And that's it. Then zip it. No more talking. If your pattern is something like avoiding, procrastinating, whatever, something like that, then you just decide, then the interruption is to actually do it, to say, "You know what, this doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to take care of this. I'm going to send a simple text. I'm going to communicate." When all else fails, think of it like you're communicating to a 5-year-old and just say whatever you need to say very simply. No excuses, no reasons, no over explaining, no, over efforting and packaging it, whatever. Just, "I'm not going to be able to do that thing I said I was going to be able to do. Maybe I can join you next time," or something like that. And then just send it. Don't wait for the right moment or for you to rewrite it 10 times to say it right. So those are just a couple of examples of what interruptions look like. Because it's not about like some version of fixing your life. It's not about nothing ever bothering you. It's not about nothing ever triggering you, nothing ever being a problem. When you get really good at this, you're still going to have problems, but you're going to be so much better at addressing them in a way that's really sustainable, that's really, like in our medical metaphor of pneumonia, isn't just taking cough syrup for the cough. It's taking that antibiotic for the pneumonia, right? So you can just get rid of all of it. Then you won't need the cough syrup because you won't have the problem that was causing the cough. And that's how I want you to think of this work I'm talking about in the way out session, because it's going to take you from that problem to the awareness of the pattern if you're not aware of it, or sometimes it just helps to unpack that a little more and understand more about it in our awareness. And then we go to the traction piece. How do we interrupt it? Once we've interrupted it, how do we start to behave differently? And that way, we're really just sort of taking it one pattern, one moment at a time. So just to bring this all full circle, how the framework actually operates is it's number one, realizing it's not the problem, it's the pattern. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we're ignoring our problems or you're making them up or they're fake or something. Nope, that's not true. It's more like thinking of the problem as a symptom. Then number two is the awareness. Oh, I see this thing happening. I see that there's this pattern, or I can see that there's some kind of repeat happening. You may not be able to identify the pattern because I keep having this problem over and over again with different people. So then at least you have an awareness of the concept that I'm talking about, which is, oh, I bet Brenda's right. Underneath here must be a pattern. There's probably a pattern even if you don't know what that is. Then in the way out, we can identify that pattern. What is it? So you understand it better, which makes traction, part 3, easier. Traction's really hard. If we try to go from the problem to traction, that's really hard because we've missed this sort of diagnosis of what's actually causing the problem. Our traction's going to be much more random or ineffective at times because we're probably trying to get traction against the problem. But when we go to that pattern, then our traction really digs deep, right? And we can interrupt it, and then we can decide how we want to start showing up differently as a different version of ourselves. Not the version of ourselves stuck in the pattern who just wants to be more clever about how we solve our problems. Get some better cough syrup. No, we're going to heal that pneumonia and then decide how do we show up without that. Now that I don't have that pattern, what do I want to say yes to? What do I imagine for myself that I need to start saying no to things so I can say yes to these other things that I want to start creating or getting involved in or experiences I want to start having? If you think of it this way, just for the problem end of the yes, saying yes to too much, every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. It may be no to your own white space, no to your own peace of mind, no to your own relaxation, restoration, all of that, which you have learned through your pattern to dismiss as not as important as whatever somebody's asked you to do. So that's why we've got to do the pattern and then go to the traction. So the traction is on that thing that's really going to make all the difference. And that's why the way out is so effective, because clients come in, they know their problem. A lot of times they actually even know the pattern that's going on. But a lot of times we can go a little deeper there, open that up, understand that more, have some self-compassion for how it got started in the beginning, all that. And then go to the traction piece. So I hope that you will you could just put in the comments, way out, and I will get you the information for the way out, or the link is in the show notes, always in the show notes. The link where you can find out more about it if you want to just read more about what the session's like, the format, blah, blah, blah. If you like all that information, it's all there. And then also in that same link, you can book your session. You just do it right there. You pay, you go to the calendar, you book it, okay? And we can talk about your pattern and start the traction, interruption, and changing how you respond part, maybe even this week, but for sure next week, So that is there for you. You deserve that. We can't really figure out both the pattern and how to interrupt it usually on our own. I want you to think my metaphor about this is a jar. If you're looking at a jar of pickles, let's just say, and you're in your kitchen and you've got that jar on the counter, it's very easy for you to see the label and to see that's a jar of pickles, okay? But if you're a pickle inside that jar, you can't see the label. So I'm outside of the jar in the kitchen and you are in the jar, and there's nothing wrong with that. It took me years and years of working with people to understand these dynamics myself, to see my patterns, and then to get traction through the interruption and changing how I respond process. I did not do all that alone. I invested in myself, even often when it was financially incredibly painful, because I wanted to break this problem at the source. Not at the problem surface level, but at the source. And none of us can see our blind spots. That's why we call them blind spots. So that's what I'm for. I'm your resource to help you in seeing your blind spot. And then in ways that work for you, because the things that worked for me and another client to interrupt and change the response don't necessarily work for you. And so we'll keep trying on things until we find the one that works for you. And then you will have that full process. And then the problem is not going to present itself that way again. Or even if it does, you won't respond to it the same way. It won't continue to repeat itself. You will have freedom from it. So I hope that you will do it. I hope you'll invest in yourself. I hope you'll take that little risk of 90 minutes to come spend with me and try this out, because I've not had anybody disappointed yet. So I doubt you will be the first. So this is super effective, and you deserve this level of freedom in your life. If something in this episode rang true, that matters. Awareness is powerful, but interruption is what creates change. So remember, you're not stuck. There's nothing wrong with you. You're patterned. If you're ready to interrupt that pattern, then book a way out session. We'll identify it clearly, interrupt it directly, and build a new response for you. The link is in the show notes. And if this episode helped you see something differently, send it to somebody who needs it. That's how we grow. I also love to give a shout out to listeners who leave reviews and share an episode, because I love recognizing the people who are actually doing the work. I will see you in the next episode.